Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and gals. Got my Fairlife here. A little bit of oat still stuck to that cup, that's what you're seeing there. Had some oatmeal in there earlier. Yes, I do grow stuff like that. Alright, let's talk about, all of this newer scientific data on volume. And this one is kind of a tough pill for me to swallow, and I always want to be clear, the problem we have with exercise science research as it pertains to lifting, hypertrophy, these things, the quality of the science is not that good, okay? It's not that good. It throws a lot of things into question. There's a lot of conflicting data in these fields, and it really creates a mess of things, okay? And so for me, I've been sitting down trying to pour through the different studies, including all this newer stuff like the peaking up to the 52 set a week study. And I'm trying to look at it objectively and be intellectually honest. Because I've even said, I don't know that this sort of it's a very tough pill to swallow, particularly given that we had other not that great studies. This is not that great of research either. It really isn't. We had other studies though showing anything past 10 sets in a workout, we started seeing sometimes less muscle growth, not just a diminished return, but an actual decline. People were making less gains, but then some of that data came into question through later analysis, and then we're getting these really high volume studies, and then people are throwing out there, well, maybe extremely small benefits. A lot of people will say, look, you can just throw it, this stuff's all nonsense. Anyways, there's so much self-reported stuff in here in terms of rate of perceived exertion, everything else. It makes the data questionable. And I'm trying to take a mature look at it though, and still say, what can we draw from it? And I'm going to say this again, trying to be intellectually honest, because I don't like the people involved in some of these studies. I don't like their circles. But here's when I have to look at it objectively and go, this is the science that we have. As flawed as it is, this is the data that we have to draw on. We can compare it to the real world. And one of the things I've noticed, I'm always like, how come when I get these novices and they do tons of volume, they stagnate forever, but they also probably don't have any work capacity. They're not in shape. They're just training and getting fatigue and then trying to do too many sets, low quality sets. Maybe they're not eating enough, not sleeping enough to recover from what they're doing, and they are having problems. And I've seen a lot of that. And I cut their volumes back and they make gains. But I've also had a little more advanced clients when I've taken their volumes up. They did make gains. And I think that's where the truth of the matter lays in here somewhere. I think what it comes down to is a few factors. I think there's absolutely an enormous diminished returns. And I've also looked at it and said, I've seen Greg Knuckles point out with even the data we have, he's like, I don't know that there's evidence that junk volume really exists. What we probably have is that the diminished returns slope is so steep that people are getting very little by adding that next 10 sets. But then we come to the question of there were a lot of champion bodybuilders and athletes who done crazy volumes, 30, 40, 50 sets a week, and produced phenomenal physiques. Even when people weren't using as much stuff as they do now, they got results. So when I try to take a mature look at it, I'm going to have to look at it and say, based upon the data that we have, I've got to lean in the direction to say that is what the preponderance of the evidence suggests. There may be a very, very high volume ceiling to where we can see benefits. But what we have to temper it with is, in the context, if the person has built the appropriate work capacity to it, for one, two, their lifestyle will facilitate the recovery for it. And I think that's what we really have to hone in on. Those 2 points. And then number 3, return on investment. Okay, let's be honest, not everyone has the free time. Okay, realistically, a whole lot of people out there with lives don't have the free time to do 50 sets for their quads or 50 sets for their triceps per week. They just don't. Okay, so in that context, that makes sense to say, yeah, what is their optimal? And, you know, if they can make 90% of their possible gains off 10 sets, 11 sets, 12 sets, people whose time is extremely valuable, it absolutely makes sense to put them there. I get clients in those situations who are like, I can train for 45 minutes 3 times a week or 4 times a week. Okay, there's no way, even with supersets, we're not going to get those sort of high quality sets. We would be lucky to even reach 20 sets if we're pushing hard because of the rest times they need, everything else, even supersetting stuff. So you got to look at that and say, okay, for them that makes sense. The diminished returns on that, one, they don't have the time. Two, they're chasing a few percent. But we would also look at it and go, okay, but what about a person who their lifestyle will facilitate it? They will eat perfect. They will eat phenomenal. They'll carb load like crazy. Eat sufficient quality protein. Get all their fruits, vegetables. Sleep 8 hours a night. Manage their stress. And they have the free time to put in those sort of sets. Well, historically, have people in those situations made great gains? Yeah, they oftentimes have. So we have anecdote. And we have emerging data. That is, again, I understand and will be the first to say the data is, it's not the best in the world. The current exercise science doesn't have the sample sizes we would want. I know we have the double-blind testing, any of those things that we might want, but we have to do something. If we're trying to test hypothesis, we've got to work with what we have. And you're seeing some of the older, lower volume data not panning out as well. And you are seeing the emerging data pushing the preponderance of the evidence into that direction. But we've got to temper it with common sense. And I really think if I'm going to be intellectually honest, and again, I say this biting my tongue because I don't want to accept it, but the data that we have suggests it, and we can explain it and observe other anecdote in the real world, and we can explain that situationally, yes, it absolutely could be true. Situationally, there will definitely be cases of people who could probably benefit from that, who are willing to optimize it. That is not going to be your average lifter, and that's not going to be your average client, but there's still plenty of people out. I mean, me. Am I in that situation? Yeah. So I've been working my volumes up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work with some of this purely because this is what the data is showing. And I'll even mess with some of it then myself, give it an honest go, and let's see how it pans out. Thus far, I'm definitely not overtraining, and people are noticing my arms are looking a little bent here, and it's like, maybe. So I'll mess with some of it. But again, there's always going to be a hesitation on this because these sort of volumes that are being pushed with some of this data can be very extreme. Again, because there's conflicting data from the past, although it's older, some of it's been kind of thrown out. We have to be careful with what we take on, but we also have to try our best, particularly someone like me who's putting information out, to try to be current with the research and to do my best to be intellectually honest in spite of my own personal biases. And that is a hard thing for people to do. Okay, that's a hard thing for us to do. But I feel like in my case, I have an obligation to do my best to do that for my audience. Okay? We have to follow what the data shows. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.